Hi, welcome to Broken and Brilliant. I'm Carrie O'Toole with Carrie O'Toole Ministries, and I'd like to welcome again my guest, Mary Ellen Mann.
So privileged to be here.
Thanks
Thank you
for coming back.
Me.
You
Sure.
bet. Well, today I think we'll talk about a more serious topic that I think is, and I know you have some statistics, but this is something that is just prevalent today, and it's not talked about nearly as much and I'm not quite sure why it's not talked about. So let's discuss that too. But we're going to talk today about sexual abuse, and you are a counselor with a private practice, and just tell me how many people do you see that are dealing with this?
Well, at least 70% of my practice, we're dealing with this problem.
Wow.
So, throughout my whole career.
Really?
And I would say on average 50%, but currently it's about 70% of the folks that are coming in.
Wow.
Are dealing with
So
that.
let's talk, what is sexual abuse?
Sure.
What is it?
Dan Allender, I think, does the best job of describing it, and what I really respect about his statement is that it's really not about the degree to which something has happened to you, but the way it makes you feel. And he also, helps. Oprah had made a great comment too, just that it's about the raping of the spirit and the soul. It's not about how one was penetrated or how much one was fondled.
Whether they were or they weren't.
Whether they were or weren't, or exposed to pornography, or whether it was all suggestive language, you look this way and that, and or, threats to pursue someone sexually. So, sexual harassment can be a form of sexual abuse. And so the topic can cover a wide range.
Right.
And what we're finding is that with Dan Allender's work, he talks about a verbal interaction in addition to the physical interactions. And so the verbal, the visual, what is said and spoken between people, how people are taunted or how they're threatened. And oftentimes there's this grooming aspect to sexual abuse. Well, that can happen in a work environment with an adult.
Right.
So that can happen between a student and a professor, like it did in my life. This happens to be very common with youth ministers and those who are dealing with children in high school and junior high. Sometimes we have people who are hurting younger children who are in leadership and so forth. And what people in recovery and in counseling with me talk more about is less that physical moment and more about all the emotional and psychological pieces that filtered into that relationship over time, whether it was through a grooming process, building a relationship of trust, really staging it for perpetration. So these are the things that really do get covered in my work.
Right. As these women are talking to you, what is a common theme of what this does to them? Emotionally, spiritually?
Yeah. I'm going to start with a quote from Mary Ellen Mann. She's actually local to Colorado. She's written a book called Miss America by Day. And reading through her book, there's this beautiful quote, painful, but she said, basically, my life was a can of white paint. And sexual abuse was like dropping drops of red paint into it. And it just colored my entire life. So
it's not something that you can compartmentalize and just
not to my understanding, really. I think people long to compartmentalize it, and they try to because they don't want it to be real. They don't want it to control their life and their life choices. And so the moment when I am hearing people's stories, and it's women, but it's also men that are in my practice discussing this, I don't know, they can be highly accomplished people, but when we start talking, very strong, very brave, very courageous, everything comes very easily to them. And when we start talking about this, it's like their whole body winds up into a top, just in this tight little knot. And like if you let it go, like you let a top go, it just could just spin out of control.
And that's probably how they feel.
And that's how they feel.
If I talk
on the
about
inside.
this, I'm going to spin out of control.
Right. So the manifestations of what sexual abuse can do to us, range from struggling with basic everyday hygiene, daily hygiene, to finding a career that truly suits your personality. If you're living compartmentalized, you don't know what you want. You know, when
Right.
people say, what makes you happy?
I don't know.
They may say, I don't know, or, well, what makes you happy? And I'll see if that can make me happy. So that sense of differentiating themselves as separate from the abuse is a huge part of the intervention therapy. And most therapists I know working in this field are trying to help that survivor create.
Well, and isn't there something about feeling like if I was abused, then I want to be anything but what I was when that abuse occurred. So if I was living out who I truly am then I'm going to hide now and become something different so that it doesn't ever happen again.
You know, yes. And so the reality is that people take on personas. They take on sometimes, you know, a compulsively caregiver. Sometimes they're real tough and they reject the world. You know, they make people pay, you know, so there's that element. And sometimes, you know, it's people who are, they're dealing with they get very legalistic with themselves. Like they're good or they're bad. And, you know, so working
very
through
black
those
and white
tendencies of I'll care for you so that I don't have to, so I can feel powerful and being influential with you, but I don't want you to touch my pain. So you can have that compulsive caregiver, like I said, or the rejecter, or someone who gets in a really black and white mode, kind of all in or all out. And so a lot of people who I've seen too suffer through sexual abuse and not really deal with it. They tend to have a very legalistic view of God, very legalistic view of mercy and grace and peace. And, you know, so there's femininity and all of that.
What that is
very treacherous for them.
For those who maybe don't understand,
sure.
What is a legalistic view of God? What does that look like?
You know, God's going to be mad at me. God is mad at me. God, I can't satisfy God as someone to please. God is not someone who cares for me.
Because he could have protected me and he didn't. Isn't that kind of where that comes from?
That's also part of the staging. I mean, there's just so many layers, really, spiritually. The sexual abuse there's a huge issue for me, if I may just kind of go on with this, that I am praying a lot about, and that is teaching pastors and people who lead youth ministries to stop using the word sinner. Now, I understand we're all sinners, but when you're talking to an audience of people who 1 in 4 women has gone through sexual abuse before she's 18, and 1 in 3 women has been abused in her lifetime, and you look at them and you say, God loves you a sinner, more often than not, you just spoke to their shame. You have not told them any good news. You've told them what they already believe they are, damaged goods. So the gospel rests not on a hopeful heart, but a shameful heart. If we can shift that around and say, God forfeited his own son because he can't live without you. And the deal with his holiness is that something has to pay for the sin of humanity.
Yeah, whether it was done to you or whether you did it.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's I'm a coach now, and what I understand is so many people, they don't even recognize their own sin necessarily because they have been so sinned upon.
Right.
And until you recognize that and until you validate that and say, that is reality, it did happen to you, and it was horrible, and you did not deserve this. If you just go at people for, oh, well, what did you do? What did you do? You're a sinner, all of this. Where does that leave them in this pain of unfairness? And I think I get that.
You know, and if we can culturally shift the dynamic to one of God searching for you and God wanting you and adoring you and liking you, because I think love for sexual abuse victims and survivors is an extremely complicated thing to say.
Because if somebody said, I love you, so therefore I'm doing this to you.
Absolutely. I mean, rationalizations are given all the time in those scenarios, in sexual harassment and rape assault. And I thought you loved me. I thought we loved each other. I mean, so it's going on in dynamics that are far larger than just sexual abuse. Now, sexual abuse being a huge deal because children are so vulnerable to the messages being given to them. They don't have brain formation to say, what you're telling me is a lie.
Right.
So that's the massive damage going on when it's under 18.
Right.
When the brain's more developed around 25 or older and someone says something like that to them, if they haven't been already assaulted.
Which now you're only talking about how many, what percentage of the people? If 1 in 4.
If 1 in 4. So if you haven't been assaulted, you may have the capacity to deny that. But if you have been assaulted already before 18, and then these things come again in your adulthood, the damage is just, mounting one upon the other, and the defense is very thin. And so when we talk about legalism, it is imperative to me that we are teaching that the grace and mercy message is that he just likes you. He'll do anything just to have a connection with you. And that's the good news.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that's a much different message, isn't it? I mean, it's the same message, and yet it's just spoken with such compassion and empathy for what it's a more relational message,
and if we look at what Jesus did, he attached first. He took care of us first. And then a year after he started doing it, he said, okay, now I'll tell you. I'm the Son of God. Yeah. Now I'll tell you. This is the deal. This is who I really am. And this is
hurting you. So, hey, don't do that anymore because I love you.
Right. And by the way, if you get rid of some of this sin, we can, you can feel my mercy and healing more.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how it ever comes across. And I've worked with children's ministries, and they say, if you've sinned, you've committed all sins. You've considered a sinner in all ways. And we've got black and white little thinkers sitting there going,
but I'm not a bad
person. Or I'm a good person.
Right.
And I'm bad. And so Jesus had to do this to make me good. Right. And so when you add that into a sexual abuse scenario where you've lived through that and the memories are coming back and someone says, you're a sinner, we have just widened that wound. And so my deep passion, because I was one of those people sitting in, the Sunday services year after year, from the time I was 5 until I was 30, hearing God loves you, you're a sinner, God loves you, you're a sinner. Well, what do you think I really heard? I just heard you're a sinner. You're bad. You're a part of the problem. And so
it's not what was done to you is bad. You are bad.
Grasp it. I felt like it just created this 10-foot distance between me and God. So that is a definite need for this population to hear.
And I would just encourage anybody listening, if you are a pastor, if you have a pastor, if you've got pastors that are friends, please pass this on to them and ask them to watch it. Say, please, this is important. If this could get out there, if this message could get out there, it really could be a cultural change.
I'm hoping so.
And Mary Ellen, tell us some of the other things that you're doing. I know that you're writing a book and you've got a website. Tell us a little bit about that for hope and help for some of these people.
So basically the book is called Battle Scars of the Princess Warrior.
And it's not out yet.
We're taking care to figure out who's going to help us process that dream. But it is pretty much a done project. And the point of the book is to braid in my story and then to talk a little bit about but more importantly, give you a lot of tools of how to heal through this. So things I've learned in my therapy practice, in the front lines, dealing with this with, at this point, probably thousands of people. And having recovered from my own doubts, my own anger. So because a lot of my abuse took place with Christians. So you'll hear a lot of stories about, well, before I was a Christian, this took place. And then I became a Christian and everything became new.
And life was great, wasn't it?
And my testimony is very different. I've had multiple salvation cycles. So anyhow, that's in there. And then talking a lot about the importance of the community and how we can band together and really make some changes and protect children. So the Princess Warrior is the sexual abuse survivor. And we've used the word sexual violation so that it doesn't, so it covers a wide range of the assaults that can take place in this realm. So
because like you said earlier, it's not just a matter of whether it was rape or something like this. It could be a whole spectrum.
Anything that was unwanted.
So
sexual advances.
Sexual violation is what you're calling that. And I liked that you didn't say sexual violation victim. You said sexual violation survivors.
Right. And so princess warriors were princesses because we're made by the hand of God, and He is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and we're made through Jesus, who is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and we're made to house the Spirit of God. We're designed that way. So I think that makes us quite royal. The reason I said warrior and named her a warrior is because she is engaging a battle. With 1 in 3 women being assaulted in her lifetime, we know that this is the last battle. This is the battle of all battles, and it's time for us to start seeing it not as our secret, but as a battle against us that Satan really is waging against God. But he's using, the great force of the female to do so. He is wounding God as he wounds us. And so if we can, as princess warriors, band together and speak up, I think, and create a voice that gets this stuff out of secrecy and shame, we're smart enough to figure out a way to take care of each other, to engage men in this who are very loving and want to be a part of this.
Because all men are not perpetrators.
By no means, and I'm in a house of men. So I have 2 sons and a wonderful husband, and they've been an enormous part of my healing. So, yes, thank you for saying that. And then the other piece was the website, and the website is called lastbattle.org, and lastbattle.org
link that on the podcast.
Is basically our hope and dream is to make it kind of a one-stop shop where you can buy some products and so forth. But the real wonderful thing is that there's a blog and a gallery. So it's an online community for our princess warriors. And we're developing some jewelry and getting that set up so that people can have that. We also have the book that we can sell.
And what I loved was that you have a resource for people wherever they are in the country. They can find a counselor.
Well, and we're developing that. Now, a problem with that has been that until the website is a little bit more active, we have not had a strong response at this point. Okay. But we are hoping that once the product line is out and we're building, some more
so you're kind
social
of on the
media.
Ground floor here.
We're very much on the ground floor. But we're very excited if you can come and visit our website.
So can
we've heard
people
great things about it
contact you
from
if they are interested in maybe supporting your website? If
that
they're
would be great.
A counselor, or if they have some means?
Actually, because it's an educational organization, some folks have already donated to this, and they've received a tax write-off for it because of the book and what we're outlining in the website. So certainly if they feel like they want to do that. So far, most of the funding has been my own personal investment, but because I just know it's important and we've got to do this.
It's your calling.
It's my calling. And my hope is to someday have a memorial in Washington, D.C., right next to the World War II memorial, really saying something about this. So for the women 1 in 3, and that we can have a memorial for this battle, because it has shaped sons and daughters and marriages. It deserves mention and it deserves recovery.
It's destroyed many people, and yet those who have been able to get the help and have found help. And I don't want to say like that there are some who just let it destroy them. Sometimes people just don't know where to go. They don't have, it has taken them so far down, they don't have the finances or they don't have the wherewithal to figure out even where to go.
Right.
So my hope for this is that it will give people the courage to step out and say, really, there is hope?
Yes.
Where do I go? How can I find this? And maybe even if they take one step, it'll help them somewhat. And then they take another step and it just continues until they're healed.
And imagine a world of healed women, and men who've been through this. So I know there are people who really believe in this and they're good people, and there are perpetrators out there, and we have to be aware that perpetrators are obsessive and they don't stop until people report their crimes. So it is so important that we are all learning together to stand up for ourselves, for the children, for anyone we know who's been victimized. These survivors out there can absolutely heal because the brain is neuroplastic, so the brain can grow and learn new things, and where this just becomes truly what it is, this thing of the past, rather than something that informs and controls you today.
Well, and the podcast is called Broken and Brilliant, and I want to thank you because I think that a lot of times people always wonder, how do people get into their certain career, or why are you so passionate about this? Well, this was you. This is not like you're just so smart and you went to school and figured this out and you kind of have pity for people that this has happened to. I mean, I'm finding that the more people I talk to, they are where they are because of the wounds that they have experienced themselves. Right. Is that why you went into counseling?
Well, why I went into counseling was pretty unrelated to all of this. But I think I went into counseling in retrospect now, was because I didn't want to look at this part of my life. I had rationalized it's okay. It could have been worse. It's over. But I didn't want to really look at how much this had controlled me through anxiety and bad dreams and, a lot of frenetic pace I was keeping up with. And I had really learned to abuse myself through workaholism. So I backed into counseling and stumbled into a private practice. And lo and behold, I find out this had to be dealt with.
Right. So then did you find yourself in counseling?
Oh, yes. I've gone to therapists since I was probably 19 years old, off and on. So that plus a ton of study and letting people know about it and seeking help, letting my friends and my family know is affecting me.
Well, I have found this to be true in my life, that the more healthy I get, the more I'm okay talking about it.
Yeah.
I find sometimes when people are really still in the throes of something or it still fills them with shame, they kind of hide and don't want to talk about it. And it seems to me that the healthier you get, you almost feel compelled because you know what it was like to be so alone and isolated, and you want to offer that hope that you don't have to live like that.
Well, Carrie, that's why you're a hero, is that you really do. You convert your brokenness into something people can be healed by.
Well, it seems to me that it's worthless.
You may feel like it's logical, but a lot of folks don't have that same courage. So I do want to highlight, like, that is possible for all of us, and to you
me,
represent
it just feels like the pain. Why would I have gone? It has to have a purpose. Yeah. Why would I have gone through all of that just to move on and go, okay, now I think I'll sell real estate? And, I could sell real estate. I would probably be very good at it, but there would be no passion in that because I was not impacted by that. So I know that there are other people suffering, and I just want to be able to, my hope and my goal right now is to bring in people who can help others and just connect them and make counseling more relatable and put a face to a counselor. Yeah. You are a counselor.
Yes.
Who could not want to come and sit and spend an hour with you? And there's thousands of them out there.
Great people out there.
Absolutely. I want to plug one other thing here too that doesn't have to do with either you or I, but this was actually how I found you. For those of you who are looking for a counselor and don't know where to go, 1-800-NEW-LIFE is a wonderful resource, and it's a network of about 800 Christian counselors throughout the country that have all been pre-screened, and so they know what they're doing, and you can call that number, and the people on the other end will take your zip code, what your insurance is, what your issue is, and they'll match you. And they matched me with Mary Ellen all those years ago, and it was an awesome experience and way to find it rather than just hit or miss and making phone calls. So just want to throw that out there too.
That's a great resource. And I've actually, I receive a lot of questions about where to go for people in different places around the country. And I do offer them the New Life connection.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you said something about that.
Well, you bet. Well, thank you again, Mary Ellen, for being here. This is a tender subject, and I think you handle it so delicately and, like you said, with honor to the people who have been through it. And
definitely. That's
what they need. Right. They absolutely need a gentle touch and honor and respect. And the fact that you call them heroes, and it's awesome because that's what it is.
Well, they're princess warriors.
Absolutely.
And they have a right to fight for the truth God has for them.
Absolutely. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's an honor. Thank you.
And we will see you next time here on Broken and Brilliant.